Okay, welcome into KC Sports Tonight, Monday, January 5th, aka the first day of the Chiefs offseason, which is kind of uncharted waters for this team. Gabe, first time in 11 years that the offseason, or the postseason rather, is going on and the Chiefs are done. We heard from head coach Andy Reid today. Just curious your thoughts on maybe the Raiders finale, and we're not going to harp too much on this, but we're going to give a quick little review of the 2025 season.
Yeah.
Obviously, we could talk for hours about what we just witnessed.
Yeah, yesterday I would say that I was of the mentality if the Chiefs were going to win, they needed to at least look competent, and they did not look competent for most of the game, specifically on offense.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of that can be a lot of people would say, oh, they didn't have Patrick Mahomes, they didn't have Rasheed Rice, they didn't have their starting offensive tackles. They still had Travis Kelce, they still had Creed Humphrey, they still had Juju Smith-Schuster, they still were trying. They have admitted in part that they have been trying. They tried against the Titans. They tried against the Broncos. They tried against the Raiders. And they had, on a points per drive basis and an EPA per play basis, which is literally just a mark that is checking per play. Are you advancing the ball towards scoring or not? They had the 32nd ranked offense from week 16 through 18. That is worse than the Jets, who were playing Brady Cook, who we all know was a good college quarterback, is not a good NFL quarterback.
Sure. Yes.
That includes the – you can throw that out there. I'm not going to do that, but you can do that. That includes the Raiders themselves, who we saw Kenny Pickett looked largely incompetent. Aiden O'Connell was okay in spurts. And it includes the Titans, who looked really competent against the Chiefs, but didn't look very good against most teams this season. Specifically, didn't look really good against the Jaguars on Sunday when the Jaguars had something to play for, locking up the AFC South. Overall, really disappointing. I was the 5 minutes in which I was most frustrated with watching the game was when I thought that for a second the Chiefs were going to win, hurt their draft positioning despite not playing well.
Yeah.
So it was a frustrating watch. And then we heard, you know what, the question was asked today on the Zoom of Andy, what was the idea behind calling timeout with 17 seconds left? And the answer was the answer. If you'd care to go find it, it's available to you online.
On KCTV5.com.
On KCTV5.com.
Yeah.
And I will say this. I don't think the answer makes sense. I'm happy that he did it because I think that it was a lifeline to the Raiders in a spot where they were more likely than not going to run another incompetent play, and then the clock was going to run out because they had no timeouts left. I'm glad it happened. I'm glad that the Chiefs have the 9th pick. It's a huge offseason. Yeah, it's a huge offseason. It is the most critical offseason, I would say, of the Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes era of Chiefs football in terms of whether they're going to be able to get back to the peaks that they've been to. And I think there are a lot of questions that Andy Reid did not answer today, such as what staff changes are going to be made, what he feels like it's in terms of the roster needs to change. He said after the game yesterday in Vegas that he's going to leave that up to Brett Veach. I think that is a little bit of
maybe underselling Reid's influence.
Yes,
on
a little bit of
yeah,
exactly, a little bit too much credit to Brett Veach, and I think that we've seen the issues of the Chiefs roster and maybe Brett Veach giving too much roster input to Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo in terms of giving them certain players that they then don't use. We've seen it 2 years in a row with Josh Uche. 1 year they trade for a guy, he doesn't really get used at all, so you end up just basically burning a draft pick for no reason. And then there were several rookies this year. Brashard Smith looked decent as a running back yesterday, and it made you wonder, could we not have explored that a little bit more during games that mattered earlier this year?
Sure.
A lot of things, but yeah, the 2025 Chiefs season is over.
Yeah.
Which is
a reason to be grateful today.
I was a little, of all the things that Andy Reid said today on the Zoom, the simplifying it to one-score games as the reasoning for failure, I think is ignoring some of the problems. And that concerned me to hear, if they think that it's really just, oh, we got to win one-score games. Because I think the problems are a little more fundamental than that.
Yeah, I think they're not one to, especially Andy Reid's not one to reveal much of his cards. The one-score answer is the easy answer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they just had player meetings today. Interesting, you note on the staffing changes. We already know that Matt Nagy and Steve Spagnuolo have each had head coaching job interest in other franchises. Those interviews can't happen in person until the 19th, so it'll be certainly a couple weeks before we hear any movement on that. I said we're not going to go into the weeds in it, and I'm like, what about the developmental, the development issues of the wide receiver room? I mean, that's been a big conversation too, is guys not really taking a big step up from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. Xavier Worthy being in that category didn't really have a great year. You look at the receiver room. I was looking back in our kind of story archive today about the first time that we were going to see Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, and Xavier Worthy on the field at the same time, and it was like, finally, this 1-2-3 punch we've been talking about, and kind of didn't really do a whole lot. I've said this on the show. I'd be interested to see kind of the 1-2-3 combo rankings across the league, and I mean, the Chiefs would finish middle of the pack. Travis Kelce leading this team in receiving yards in year 13.
Crazy.
Yeah, lots of issues there. At a certain point, Travis Kelce is leading the team in receiving yards. Patrick Mahomes was leading the team in rushing yards through, week 5 or 6?
Yep.
And had several games after that.
I think Patrick Mahomes led the team in rushing in a game in 5 or 6 of the 17 games. So almost a third of the games.
And this is not like a Lamar Jackson,
designed
scramble.
Runs.
Right,
no.
Yeah. If anything, it's like, stop touching him. Get him out in the pocket and throwing downfield, which was a point of emphasis this season that we've been talking about since training camp too. So, yikes. As you said, good news is it's over, and we can move right along to the off season. We'll have a lot to talk about over the next couple months. Next 6 weeks are going to feel weird, though, because 5 of the last 6 years, this team has had 5.5 more weeks of football to play. But, as we've talked about, as you've heard from Steve Spagnuolo, gives this group real focused time to think about how they want to rebuild their roster next year instead of getting in the weeds of game planning, I guess, is a positive. And of course, the number 9
a way
draft
to spin
pick
it.
coming up. Yeah, right. As I was saying,
that's
I'm like,
such a cope. It's a coping.
But if you
it's
think
a coping
about
answer.
it, think about all the time they can pour into draft scouting. Yeah. Anyway,
it's done a whole lot for a lot of the teams that have missed the playoffs for years and years and years and years.
Speaking of, before we move on from the NFL topic, because I promise you we will, the Pete Carroll news today, fired after 1 year. Curious your thoughts on that.
Good for him that he got a win on the way out.
Yeah.
I'm
surprised. I thought he was going to I thought maybe he might retire. I was kind of surprised.
I think the Raiders wanted him to retire, and I think that he had no business opting out of millions of dollars for the next 2 years.
We just got
and said, if you want to pay me severance, I'll go for it. But it's crazy, the Raiders, the amount of coaches that they are still paying to not do the job. That is now Pete Carroll, Antonio Pierce, John Gruden. Man, they're I don't even know what the total amount of coaches is that they've employed since.
It could be worse.
I think the longest tenured guy in the NFL in terms of head coaching position, it's either John Harbaugh or Mike Tomlin. But those two guys we saw both of them coach on Sunday Night Football last night. Those two guys have probably been around for, I think, 6 or 7 at least, Raiders coaches. Which just goes to show the amount of turnover that organization has had and the inability to get it figured out. And I find it at least moderately entertaining that Tom Brady is now tasked with
yeah.
figuring out how to
Yeah.
fix this organization that has been plagued by issues.
He's done a lot in his career, but this might be an insurmountable obstacle. We'll see.
There's so much. There's so much evidence. You just point to great players across the board in other sports running teams. It just always works out, right? Like Michael Jordan with the Wizards and the Hornets. Magic Johnson with the Lakers. These guys just are so great at running organizations. So we'll see how Tom Brady follows it up.
I want to ask you a trivia question without looking at the screen.
Okay.
This was on Price Chopper Game Day on Sunday. The Raiders have the number 1 pick in April. When is the last time they had the number 1 pick, and who was it?
It'd be...
if anyone in this newsroom,
it's Jamarcus Russell.
Yeah, it was 2007.
I'm trying to remember
you don't
what
need
year.
To get the year.
07?
Yeah, it was 07.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yikes, which I think was referred to as the biggest bust in NFL draft history. So, fingers crossed the Raiders can improve on that. We did have a comment on our I know we have a lot of people listening on KCTV5 Plus, some on YouTube. On our Facebook page, Dana commented, "I would have hated to be that Pittsburgh kicker yesterday." Did you watch?
And then Baltimore followed it up.
You know what? I would have hated to be the Pittsburgh kicker for about
2.5 minutes
of
and then,
just torment. But can you imagine the relief after seeing that Baltimore kick miss? Wild.
I was talking about that game this afternoon with Greg Daly, our digital manager, and saying how it felt it was like the off-brand version of Chiefs Bills 13-second game
version,
where the great value version. Like, it was cheaper, it was lower stakes, it was to get into the playoffs, not to get to the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
But it was a great game, and it got so much better, like exponentially better in the last 3-4 minutes.
Yeah.
And every time somebody scored, you were like, that's it.
Yeah.
And it just went back and forth.
You missed the extra point.
Except for the last 2 plays of scoring plays was a missed extra point and a missed field goal.
The 4th down conversion, it was like, okay,
oh, it's over.
Surely, the Isaiah Likely connection was like, okay, well, now you're in field goal range.
Great
anyway.
game.
Great game. Yeah. And now, here, more silver lining spins, we can just relax in the postseason.
And just watch. Just sit back and watch the chaos.
Stakes.
And it's going to be a chaotic year because I don't know if anybody is great.
Yeah, well, what's the word? Parody. I think that might be the most
used. The NFL loves it.
Andy Reid word at the podium. Okay, some more head coaching news. Actually, kind of a lot of this today. Sporting KC naming their Peter Vermees replacement today. We got the news a couple weeks ago. I don't know, time kind of blurs together. Today we didn't find out, but Andy Reid pointed out that it's been 3 weeks since Mahomes tore his ACL. That feels like 6 months ago. Yeah.
So long ago, which just shows you how bad how much bad football weighs on you.
Yeah, goodness. Anyway, an undetermined amount of time ago, found out that Kerry Zavagnin was moving on for the program. He obviously served in the interim capacity. So it'll be Raphael Wicki as the next head coach of Sporting Kansas City. I think he's the 5th tenured coach in Sporting Kansas City history. The first, obviously, since Peter Vermees and the long tenure that he had here in Kansas City. Joining a struggling Sporting KC team that's, made the playoffs a couple years ago, or would that be 3 years ago now, and had to overcome MLS history to do so, going winless through the first 10 games of the season, then ended up rallying back and making it, but finished last in the Western Conference this year. Gabe, we'll be able to talk more on this tomorrow once we hear from Wicki, but just your thoughts on Sporting finally naming their next head man.
Yeah, it feels like it's really close to the season, and it was a drawn-out process. I'm not a soccer expert, despite being called soccer boy by Neil for several weeks. So I'm
just
not going to...
for a couple weeks.
For a couple weeks, he was calling me that. So I moonlighted as that, but I'm not going to pretend like I had never heard of Raphael Wicki before today.
Right.
So
by the
I
way,
can't
Vermees
say
fired 9 months ago. Yeah, exactly.
So I can't say that like I have I can't be like, this is a great hire. There's a a really long-standing bit, I guess, online from Tom Fornelli, who covers college football for CBS Sports. And basically anytime a college team hires a head coach, he says, blank is a great hire. I have no idea if it will work out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel about this, where it's like I read his accomplishments, his resume and stuff, and I was like, you know what?
Okay.
I can see why he got the job.
Sure.
I don't know if it'll work out.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm open to it. Anything is probably better than what they have been doing.
Yeah.
So changing it up, getting a fresh voice in the system, a fresh voice, a fresh mentality in terms of the front office and putting together the roster. They've done that as well.
And a face you expect to see there for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
There's no like temporary Band-Aid or like some hovering deadline of an interim title. We'll see. Again, we'll hear from him tomorrow at 3 o'clock. You can stream that here on KCTV 5 Plus as well. Okay. This news over the weekend, but we heard from Matt Quatraro today, inking a 3-year deal to stay in Kansas City through 2029 with a 2030 club option. Gabe, this is someone we can talk slightly more about, of course. Yeah. We have seen Matt Quatraro for years and years in the league, and specifically, what is he, year 4 in Kansas City now?
Yes.
5, 4?
Yes, 4.
Time is not my thing today. Anyway, your thoughts on the extension, obviously well-deserved, and cool hearing from him today on Zoom.
Yeah, I think it is. I think he's the best. I think he is the best manager, and in terms of the coaching staff, I hope that the next extension is Brian Sweeney as the pitching coach, because he's had unbelievable results with the pitching staff across the board. But I just think that from an organizational process standpoint, the Royals have started to get things right, and it's honestly starting to feel like they are becoming one of those mid-market teams that is outperforming expectations. They're winning on the margins. They're making smart, smaller moves, and I feel like this is kind of when he got hired. I remember the first season that he was in Kansas City, it may have been, and he came to do a preseason interview here at the station, and
which was really cool.
A lot of these guys they're not obligated to do those kinds of things, and he showed up by himself.
That's crazy.
The Royals PR people, I think somebody was sick for the day, so they just couldn't make it. So he just showed up and buzzed in, introduced himself, did the whole didn't act like he's you got to know who I am.
Right.
And I think that's he understood that he came from the Rays. He didn't come from the Yankees or the Red Sox or some big name but his resume spoke for itself, even though he did it in a smaller market, and he's brought that to Kansas City, and they've been really good. And the fact that he wants to commit, that he doesn't just want to play out this and then leverage it and do what Craig Counsell did in Milwaukee, where he was really good in a small market and then got a huge contract to go coach the Cubs. The fact that Matt Quatraro wants to latch himself to this young core
and what he's building here,
what he's building, that's a great sign. So
Yeah.
I think it's really good. I loved the little story he told about Vinny Pasquantino reaching out and being like, "You're welcome. We're playing well, so you get an extension, and you get
Which,
some
if
more
you've
security."
ever heard Vinny Pasquantino say anything, you can hear the jest
Yes.
that was said in.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, Royal season opener, by the way, coming up in just a couple of months. I think my timing is so thrown off because I'm used to being done with covering the Chiefs and going straight into March Madness and stuff. So there's this weird pregnant pause of what do we do now? There's a lot to do now, as you're seeing on our rundown here. One of those is college hoops, which brings us to our final topic of the day, specifically Darren Peterson over the weekend. So, in case you missed it, Jayhawks down in UCF for their conference opener. Darren Peterson, who had missed 9 out of 13 games of the non-conference slate, and I think in 2 of those games that he did play, he was super limited in the second half, or had to come out early in the NC State game. So lingering hamstring quad issues. Played 18 minutes in the first half against UCF, had 23 points, was playing outstanding. Only plays 5 minutes in the second half, scores 3 more points, and the Jayhawks lose down the stretch. I was watching the game back today, and the cameras just keep cutting back to Peterson
Yeah.
at the end of the bench. Like, what is going on? Is he going to come back? And after the game, Self kind of explained that there were some, what was it, a minute restriction was, I think, the wording he
Yeah.
used. Kind of clarified that today and said he did not play because of the minute restriction. He didn't play because his leg was bothering him. Gabe, I think the situation is kind of reaching a boiling point among the Jayhawk fan base, just because I know there's a lot of frustration with not seeing the projected number 1 draft pick on the floor for a team that's so close to being really, really good and probably I think, the best KU team top to bottom since 2022.
Yeah.
And you're coming off of the worst season of, Bill Self's time in Lawrence with a pretty rough roster last year. I'll preface this with, I am always on the side of soft tissue injuries are terrible. You never know where they're going to act up. It takes one weird step. You think you're fine, then it kind of re-aggravates. I know a lot of the discourse online is that, he's choosing not to play. I don't bite that, but Gabe, I'm curious just your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Dumpster fire. Stay off Twitter if you would like to avoid this conversation.
I am fascinated by the whole thing. Parts of it, like, just want to see him play because he's so good, and when he does play, it looks so good.
23 points in 18 minutes in the first.
It was unbelievable. You're like, oh, he's gonna
46.
score. They were flashing the graphic at halftime of like
the last
highest
time anyone
scoring
scored
games.
it was Wiggins.
It was
I
like
think.
Wiggins 41.
Yeah.
It was the Melvin Council game against NC State a couple weeks ago. You're like, oh, he's easily gonna be up there
And he
because
hits
he
a
just
3 early in the second half when he does play.
and then he tapped
that
out.
was it.
So, yeah, it's frustrating because, and Bill Self talked about this today, the ideas that have been circulating of like, oh, he should shut it down, and he's more obligated to himself than to KU, which there's this segment of the conversation that is KU fans are upset that Darren Peterson's not playing because it's not like an obvious injury in the sense of like you can't see that he is clearly in pain or not, and
if
he
had
looked
a cast
really
on
good.
his hand, you would not.
Yeah, if he had
twice.
if he had his ankle
Yeah.
in a huge brace or something, or if we had like seen him roll his ankle or something, everyone would be like, okay. But this is such and all of the times that Bill Self talks about it, it's like, I just don't know how he feels. I don't know how he's going to respond. I think today he was quoted as saying, honestly, I still don't even know.
Yeah.
And that feels like it's kind of the apt way to put it. I don't know. I don't know if Bill Self is helping the situation with the things of what he said, because he has been so in and out of the conversation where it feels like the biggest thing that Bill Self is trying to do is just get the fan base to not hate Darren Peterson for what's going on.
Yeah.
But the thing that I am so anti, because we're seeing it with Darren Peterson, we're seeing it now with Michael Brown Jr. at Louisville, who's dealing with back spasms, which is another injury where fans are always like, oh, it's just flaring up. Like we dealt with this with Jalen Daniels with the KU football program for all of last season.
Devin Neal's tweet.
I did not see Devin Neal's tweet.
Yeah, he posted something similar to, like, we heard this with Jalen, and then he needed surgery, so I promise these things are legitimate.
So there's all of that, and it's so frustrating to watch because he is so good when he's on the floor, and Bill has talked about how they need him. They weren't going to put him back on the floor until he was close to 100%, and I actually do believe that, like, if the idea was, oh, it flared up because you played him 18 minutes in the first half because of Melvin Council's foul trouble, which I think, if anything, the complaint would be, why are you benching a guy who fouls very rarely with 2 fouls in the first half and forcing a guy who hasn't been in game shape for so long to play all these minutes?
With a lagging soft tissue issue,
But I take the most exception of, like, anyone with it. I can understand why the KU fans are frustrated because they want to see him play. I can understand why they're frustrated because it's wishy-washy
really
and all those kinds of things, and you just can't understand it. They just want to see this team play at their best. But I am so out on the NBA people the NBA draft Twitter people coming into the conversation being like,
toxic space.
He should just shut it down. He doesn't owe anything to the University of Kansas, all these kinds of things. And all of this, in my opinion, comes down to that mentality from NBA people is such a glimpse into why the NBA is what the NBA is, of guys not playing all the time, guys only playing when they feel incredible and not playing through anything. And it is this obligation or this feeling as if they owe no one anything, and that it's all about doing what's best for yourself. And I'm so anti that mentality in sports. If you are a competitor, if you are someone who wants to be a part of something that's greater than yourself and be part of a team and win something that is beyond just making money for your bank account, go out there and compete. So I am commending Darren Peterson for remaining at KU and attempting to continue to play as long as he continues to do this and as long as it is feasible. That I don't think that quad cramps are something that's going to ruin his NBA career. And he goes out there and he plays 23 minutes and he scores 26 points. And everyone on draft Twitter anyways is like, oh, he's the number 1 pick or the number 2 pick based on that. You see the greatness. So if that's the case and he can be part of something that's bigger than himself and attach himself to a fan base that would then root for him for the rest of his career, I think that he should do that. That's part of it that is another part of the conversation that frustrates me. So I can't wait to see what happens tomorrow night. I don't know how many minutes he'll play. I hope that he doesn't play 18 minutes in the first half, because I just don't think that that's smart if he's not in game shape.
Bill Self talked about that a little bit today. He's like, no one really knows what the formula is, but there's an argument that the formula is not
that
18 minutes in the first half. Yeah.
And they need to figure out how to be better when he's on the floor. Melvin Council was a completely different player in the second half when he was not on the floor than when he was on the floor. And Bill Self talked about that today too. So
I feel like I'm being on a broken drum, but one, I haven't said this. I think that last year's roster created some serious. We talk about the Cole Aldrich tweet all the time, which is kind of a niche post reference on the show all the time. But he talks about how last year's team just looked like they weren't trying. This year's team greatly does not have that issue, to the point of where it really does remind me of the 2022. I don't know if I'm saying that they have what it takes to win a national title like the 2022 team did, maybe with a healthy Peterson, but they have that kind of energy to them, and I think that was obviously intentional from the way that Self built this team. I say that because I also think that applies to Darren Peterson. We talked about this with the NFL stuff. Steve Spagnuolo said you could take this group of guys in the parking lot to play pickup basketball right now and they'd be going 110%. You don't make it to that level without having that kind of gear, I think, in you. And also, I think I've told you the story. I, by no means, had the athletic career of Darren Peterson, but I broke my foot 2 times and I pulled my groin once. I say this all the time. I would break my foot 1,000 more times compared to that groin pull. And I felt the same thing of I'm walking around in a walking boot with crutches so everyone knows I'm hurt with a broken foot, but with my groin, I'm the only one that knows how miserable I am.
Yeah.
And I can kind of move, but then I take one weird lateral step and I'm like, oh my God. So I tend to kind of sympathize on the far end of the way a lot of this conversation is going. But I know that it's all stemmed in the fact that KU fans just want to see Darren Peterson play, which is a good place for him to be in. And hopefully he's, recovering and maybe we'll play tomorrow.
We'll see.
A lot of basketball still to go, though. First game of the conference season. A lot more of these things left. So we'll see. But that'll do it for us here on KC Sports tonight. We'll see you back here, same time, same place tomorrow. And a reminder that we will hear from Sporting Kansas City's new head coach at 3 o'clock here on KCTV 5+.